On today's episode, meet Henry Wang, a creative mind behind Google's AdMob Student App Challenge and a tech storyteller featured by Business Insider. From building platforms that empower students to shaping the future of app innovation, Henry brings a bold vision to everything he does. Product marketer who thinks big and gets things done.
Welcome to the podcast. Let me give a brief introduction. You know those people who don't just talk about growth, but actually go out there to break things. So in the best way. Henry is one of those. Grew a YouTube channel that like it was a startup, playing iOS 14.5 without putting us to sleep. And somehow made a go-to-market framework that people actually use. So welcome to Persona. It's the podcast for product marketer. I'm George, your host, trying to figure out what GTM means. Go-to-market or good try, maybe. So today's guest, Henry, a product marketer who got both receipt and result. So picture this, Henry, you are at a family barbecue. So you tell someone you are a product marketer. Their response is a slow nod. Then so you do ads. So let's clear the air. Henry, how do you explain product marketing when you are not speaking to a room full of PMM and VCs?
Yeah, thank you, George, for having me. And great question. Product marketing, if I had to explain it very simply, it's problem marketing. So in other words, traditionally marketing has been about finding a product and then trying to sell that to people to make money. Product marketing starts with the customer. So really understanding, what is the problem that you want to address, and then marketing to them in a way that speaks to their pain points. So product marketing is basically problem marketing and really putting on the customer hat to market to them from their perspective.
That's great. Great answer. So I agree. So let's rewind a bit. You are at Google. You are leading the GTM for, I think, the develop, grow, and earn. It's a narrative that gonna hit developers, creators, and product leads in one brief. So no pressure, right? Most GTMs get lost in the deck and never see daylight. What made this one stick? And was it the storytelling, the execution, or is it the fact that you didn't wait 6 months for alignment? Is that answer you can probably give a little bit more details about that?
Yeah, so develop, grow, and earn came from the idea internally that we have a bunch of Google products that developers use. But oftentimes when we market them or when we go to events to share about our products, it feels like we have many different companies trying to do different things for developers. So it actually started with internal alignment. So internally, we had to make a case to leadership, to sales. These are the two biggest stakeholders to really say, hey, what's the benefit of having one unified message versus having many different messages alone? Mm-hmm. So I think the most important stakeholder is leadership. Once you have their buy-in, it's so much easier to get everyone else's buy-in. So no, definitely did not launch without their permission. So that is the first step. The second step is really categorizing all of our products under a certain pillar, right? At the end of the day, we help developers build apps, develop, grow their apps, meaning market or advertise their products, and then finally monetize, right? So helping them earn from their apps. So once we categorize all of these products under those pillars, then we actually had a cohesive narrative, which is, hey, developers, we help you develop, grow, and earn. And these are all the products that we can use to help you do that. And also, by the way, this also enabled us to better cross-sell internally. So when our sales team goes out, they can actually reference other products that they can cross-sell our existing customers. In terms of our go-to-market, it was more we did it mainly at Google I/O and a Game Developer Conference. Google I/O is a big Google-hosted event where we announce our latest product offering. And I think that's the perfect place to launch that narrative, which is where we did. And then later on, we also launched the narrative at Game Developer Conference, which is a huge conference for app developers. And we had keynotes. We also had a booth there. And that really resonated with developers because for the first time when they came to our booth, they were like, this is what Google does. this is how Google helps us. Versus, the years before, we had product teams trying to have their own booths and people asking like, hey, are you part of Google or are you, a standalone company? So yeah, to kind of summarize, the answer is like, first, getting internal alignment, buy-in from leadership. Second, making sure that our product teams are categorized under the right pillars of our narrative, and then launching our narrative at a big event.
That's great. Having the right narrative is something that is key for most companies to have. So that's great. So 2021, Apple drops the privacy bomb, iOS 14.5 lands. So marketers panic, ad budget gets slashed, Slack channel go wild. So you, meanwhile, were decoding the SCAD network and giving the ecosystem a plan. How did you actually approach that chaos? What did you take to educate and calm the industry without turning into a mobile privacy philosopher?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it started with really understanding what's going on myself. So that means spending time with the product team at Liftoff, spending time scouring the technical docs online from Apple, and then also just making educated guesses on like what's the impact of this on marketing budget. At the end of the day, I can only educate myself on the problem and where I think the solutions could be. So I think it started there. And then once I have a good idea of what it is, a lot of it came down to like, how can I distill this information in a way that is easy to understand? So at the time I focused on, analogies and also the format, which is video. So analogies, I thought about, hey, how can I use fun analogies to show how SCAN works? So at the time I used Lego blocks to really illustrate how an ad was measured before versus, how is it going to be measured with SKAd network. And then just illustrating those with Lego blocks. So for example, before it's like, boom, you get an install and then you get the attribution right away. But with SKAd network, you get an install, but it goes to SKAd network, and then you have to guess the attribution. So using the Lego blocks to illustrate that was really helpful for our audience. And then also the format was very interesting too, because I used video. Back then, most people still use long form written content that's really hard to read and understand. I think most people are visual learners. So when they see something on a screen, and when they see animation or some Lego blocks or some even acting, not only do they learn something, but they also are entertained. And I think entertainment can help them learn faster.
That's
so, yeah, I think that is my how I approached learning and then also educating others.
That's good. You mentioned about the analogy and video, and also you mentioned something really important and key that people use it right now with TikTok, which is short-term content, which is something really great for this one. Okay, this one is wild. I would say you are not a YouTuber, you are a product marketer that a lot of people following, I would say, and yet you grow a channel from 2,000 to 15,000 in 6 months. So tell me, do you have a secret content growth hack, or what product marketing instinct did you apply to YouTube? Was it about positioning or maybe retention? Is it SEO or all of the above?
Yeah, so I can share 2 examples here, right? One is I grew the YouTube channel from 2,000 to 50,000 at Springboard. A lot of that was, again, the principles of product marketing still applies, right? Knowing the user, knowing the magic, like what's the value that you're going to bring to them, and then connecting the 2 dots, your user and your magic or your content. So at Springboard, we had 2,000 subs. Most of the content out there were quite boring. Our biggest competitors at the time were Udemy, Udacity, and Coursera.
Yes.
And they were putting out a lot of self-promotional content. So I thought, hey, how can we create content that, that's not only educates, but it's also entertaining. So at the time I thought, hey, why don't we just invite, data scientists, engineers from Google, Instagram, these big companies, have a sit down with them, content's not too long, 10 minutes, not too long, and just really understand like what do they do for their, on a day-to-day job, and how did they get into that industry. And we did a few of those. And I think after the 5th video, our, content went viral. And then we got, I think our 5th video hit like 500,000 views in like a week. But a lot of it I attribute to like one, understanding what's missing in the market, which is value-added content about what's it like to be a data science. Two, creating content that is engaging and also not too long. And then 3, promoting the content, not just relying on YouTube algorithm. I actually promoted it on Reddit. So I cross-posted on Reddit. Again, when I posted it to Reddit, it wasn't like, hey, here's a video, go watch it. Not self-promotional. I actually created an account, added some value myself in the data science group. And then eventually I just shared the video and say, hey, I came across this video, thought it would be helpful and relevant. And then that's when people, 1, they approve your post, they don't think it's spam, and then 2, it's relevant and helpful. So I think that's what helped grow. As for my own YouTube channel, a lot of it came down to, again, thinking about what's valuable for my audience, providing as much value upfront as possible without the fluff, and then growing organically that way.
Yeah, that's good. Saying about value-added content and also going to Reddit so that to promote, I think it's a good strategy that a lot of YouTubers, they don't really focus on that. A lot of times they focus on the algorithm, but sometimes when you focus on value-added content, that probably would be better off for you also from your followers. They will probably feel like, oh, you create really great content, so I will keep following you and then watching your videos. So that's a good answer. You walk into a series of startup on day 1. Okay, let's say on day 1, they have no brands, no docs, no templates, just vibe or maybe half-written brief from someone who left. Where do you even begin when your entire marketing department, where do you even begin? How do you balance strategy without burning out? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to really understanding, your stakeholders and then your priorities. So I think it starts with having a honest conversation with your manager, whether that's your CMO, your founder, or a senior marketing leader, to understand like what's the current priority of the company in terms of the business priority. Like it's not gonna be like, hey, we need a podcast or we need a new YouTube channel. It's gonna be something around like, we need to go after this market, or we need to think about a way to fix this leaky pipe in our sales pipeline, right? Talk to your manager to understand that. Once your manager or your founder gives you some guidance there, then you want to talk to the stakeholders that you will be working with. Namely, if you're in B2B, it's going to be sales and product. If it's going to be B2C, it's going to be mostly your product and your growth team. Again, you want to understand like what are their priorities, how do their priorities align with yours, and how do their priorities align with the companies as well. And then, you basically just want to be on a listening tour, listen to what's the biggest, pain points that your internal teams are having that's preventing them from achieving their biggest business goals. And then think about, what are some areas that you can help them unblock or get there faster. And then once you identify all of those things, you can create 2 buckets. One would be high priority, high impact projects, right? And then you have another bucket would be like quick, easy, low hanging fruits that you can probably tackle right away to prove that you're adding value. And then once you have those 2 lists, you should do both at the same time.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, you want to show your internal team that you can deliver. So you want to hit those low-hanging fruits quickly. Like, hey, let me go fix that deck. Hey, let me go turn that roadmap into a sales-facing roadmap. Or, hey, let me help with that messaging that our CEO is going to deliver to our biggest customers, right? You want to help do that while you're focusing on maybe 2 to 3 key projects for the quarter.
Yes.
So that way you have a good balance of you're adding value, but you're also investing for the future, which is investing in systems, marketing campaigns that would really prove impact.
That's great. That's great. Now, fast forward, let's say you're mentoring 4 product marketers because you mentor as well. Deadlines are flying, feedback loop spinning. You want to build people, not just pipelines, right? So what's your framework for growing strong PMMs? And what habits do you look for? Beside being able to say customer journey without flinching, so what frameworks do you usually go to for strong?
Are you asking like from a mentoring perspective or from a PMM that's trying to,
In terms of a mentoring product marketers, to grow more,
Yeah, so I think PMMs, in terms of mentorship, I think it's going to be a balance. It's always going to be a balance between, being firm in the direction that you want to go, and then also giving them the autonomy to get there, right? You have, I feel like there's no such thing as, micromanaging and not micromanaging, because at the end of the day, you have to micromanage in the sense of, right, this is the goal, this is the top priority. And then you want to make sure that they're spending their time working towards that. And then in terms of autonomy, I think, definitely give them autonomy to think about, hey, what are some ways to get there? And then you want to provide feedback that's ongoing to help them prioritize or help steer them in the right direction, right? So I think a good framework to use there is to think about in terms of, impact versus effort. Like, how much effort are you going to put into this task or project? And what do you think the perceived impact will be at the end of it? Ideally, you want something that's high impact and medium to low effort. You want to avoid things that are high effort, but the impact is like low to medium. So I think I would encourage PMMs to really think about that when prioritizing or thinking about, hey, what should they work on? Also, one other thing about PMMs is that I encourage people to look at what other people are doing in terms of what are other competitors doing, or what are other companies that might not be in the same space, but might be in the same overall space that's doing, that we can potentially copy. Because I think instead of trying to come up with your own idea from scratch, which is really hard, just look at what's been done successfully and try to replicate that, or, create a similar version of that at our company.
Yeah, that's a good example. Trying to look what competitors are doing, it's a good thing also to mention. There is a launch in TUI for a product. So engineering is late. Sales wants asset now. And from your gut saying the messages still need to pick. You have to choose between depth or speed. How do you make that call, especially when everyone expects magic from you?
Yeah, so in that case, I would actually figure out, the internal alignment first, because it sounds like if engineering is not ready to launch, but sales wants to start pitching it, I think that's full stop. I wouldn't even think about messaging. It would just be about timing. Like, the timing is off, right? We're trying to pitch something that engineering isn't ready to deliver on, right? That's already a gap in terms of customer expectations. So I think I would just stop there, figure out, why does sales need the assets now? Are they trying to pitch a feature, like something that's coming down the pipeline for our customers? Why is engineering slowing down? Is there another priority that they're focusing on? Try to figure out, where's the misalignment? Get alignment first, get a clean timeline on that, and then I would think about messaging. But to answer your second part of the question, if I had to choose, let's say the product is ready, sales wants to get the assets out there, and the messaging is not fully flushed. More often than not, I would lean towards speed, because messaging is something that you can always iterate or later on. And messaging isn't never meant to be a one-time success. And you're always going to have, a MVP version of messaging that you think will resonate. And then based on field conversations, you're going to have to improve on that. You're going to find, hey, maybe you have a, main point followed by, 3 sub points. And then once you have your sales team go out there, you might find that people are resonating with one of the sub points, at which point you would want to swap that with the main point. So I would say, in that case, I would optimize for speed and then just have feedback be my source of truth.
Okay, that's good to go with speed. I think it's a good choice. So now let's move to lightning round of question. So I will throw the questions and then you fire the answer. So just no think pieces allowed, just one answer. So I would just, start it. Most underrated PMM skill?
Content creation.
Okay. Favorite campaign you worked on?
Probably a student app building competition for AdMob.
Okay. PMM trend you wish would go away?
That PMMs are ignored. what people
Wow,
don't know what
really?
PMMs do. I feel
That's
like
true,
that
that's
is-
true.
Yeah, I can expound on that later.
That's true. One product launched that secretly scared you.
Something that I launched or something that
Something that you launched and then that secretly scared you, but you didn't really talk about that.
scared me.
Yeah, but secretly, probably it's success, but you probably was scared that there won't be some missing point. Yeah.
Probably same one, favorite one, student app building competition.
Okay. The tool you can't live without.
I can't live without. Right now, CapCut.
CapCut. That's true. That's good. That's good. Okay. Henry, so do you have any conclusion that you have for PMM? Usually I would ask people if there is a new PMM coming. So what advice would you give them?
If you're a new PMM, I would always think about your job in terms of balancing the business needs and the customer needs. Your role is going to be the customer advocate, the customer representative internally, right? Try to put yourself in the customer's shoes as much as possible. But at the end of the day, you have to also balance, what's the business need and where do you find the right balance between the two. More often than not, you would find that when you're more aligned with the customer needs, the better the business will perform because you are speaking this customer language, you're addressing their pain points, and you're adding value to them versus, trying to just sell them. However, there are going to be, times where you have to prioritize the business over the customer. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your company is selling to 10 different customers and
Yes.
your business is like, hey, we need to focus on 2 of those customers because they spend the most or they are the top paying customers. That's where you might want to think about, okay, maybe I need to think about how can I get more customers like those 2 and maybe not spend so much time trying to appease all of your customers. So that is one example.
That's really good, actually. Even for myself as well, I think I will take this as a good lesson to try to use the same as an example on my job. So Henry, this was gold. So thank you very much. I would say you've made go-to-market smarter and then growth understand more about products and also more, I would say mobile marketing is something that you make a little less terrifying. So thank you very much for your time and we can do this again sometimes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Persona, the podcast for product marketer. Please find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.